Through all of recorded history and history prior to the recording of history, we discover a common curiosity in humanity, and that is we want to understand our own existence, the existence of ourselves, the existence of nature, the existence of the regularity in nature, the existence of all of this spatio-temporal majesty that we see in front of ourselves and us within it. We want to understand existence. What explains it? The 66 books, the collection that we call the Bible, offers an explanation for this, and it is most profound. In the very first 4 words of the first verse contained therein, we find, "In the beginning God." Now, those first 4 words establish an enormous wealth of information for us. First of all, they tell us that God is. Secondly, they tell us there's a beginning. That's an amazing revelation in itself. And the verse goes on to say, created the heavens and the earth. So now we've learned not only was there a beginning to everything that we see and us within it, but that this being is responsible for it. Not some undifferentiated reality, not some force, but a being. But there's more. We go forward in time and we find a man named Moses. Moses grows up in Pharaoh's court, in the Egyptian court, in the palace. But he's not an Egyptian. He's been adopted into that family. And when he reaches manhood, he is curious about his own people. So he goes out and finds that his people are the slave labor force for the nation. He sees, as he observes this, one of the Egyptian taskmasters beating one of his countrymen, and he intervenes. Well, the intervention goes a little too far, and Moses kills the Egyptian. Then later he finds 2 of his own countrymen in a quarrel, and he intervenes there, and they say to him, "Will you be killing one of us as you did the Egyptian?" Well, Moses knows now that he has been found out, and so he leaves Egypt and flees to Midian and becomes a sheep and goat herder. One day, of course, back then you didn't have big cultivated, fenced-off pastures. You had to take your herds out into the wilderness to graze upon the foliated hillsides. This is a very desertified region. And so Moses is in the wilderness with his flock, and he notices a bush that is burning but is not consumed. And of course, like any normal human being, he's curious, and he walks over to it, and a voice speaks from the flames and says to him, "Moses, the ground upon which you stand is holy. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Take off your shoes." And so Moses obeys the voice as any of us would. Then a conversation ensues in which Moses is told he is to become the deliverer of his people who are in captivity as slaves in Egypt. Well, Moses is a sharp guy, and he says, "Well, when I go back to tell them that I'm the deliverer, when I speak before Pharaoh and to the Jews, who will I say has sent me? What is your name?" And we find now in the pages of Scripture something that, for me at least, is the most profound declaration in all of the Bible. We find these words in the Septuagint version, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew. We find these words, "Ego eimi ho'on," literally translated, "I am the being." God is making a declaration about himself. This is not a proper name. This is a declaration that tells us who God is and what his relationship is to the universe. As a matter of fact, it tells us about one of God's main attributes, and that is this, that he is necessary and he has what is known as aseity. He self-exists. By virtue of that declaration and that revelation we learn that God is by definition perfect. He's the creator. He's the source of all that is. He is eternal. He self-exists, and by virtue of that aseity, he is therefore perfect, the I am, the being.